Welcome, everybody. I've got Scott Church here with me, and we're here to talk about grading cards, not for PSA, but when you hear these terms, near mint, light play, moderate play, heavy play, damage, what does that mean? What does it mean for the value of a card? How do you tell if a card is light play or near mint or moderate play? So we have some examples of all of these kind of 5 buckets that you might find when you see cards for sale on websites and such. So Scott runs a card store with Category 1 Game. You do this yourself all the time. Also, a big shout out. Really appreciate all the support you've done for the channel over the years. So check out his store, guys, for all your dead CCG needs. But Scott, welcome, man. It's always good to have you back on here.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's a really interesting space. You know, we've been grading cards since about 2011. We've had cards, we've listed them in the different card grading conditions. And for a lot of the classics, collectors of Lord of the Rings, condition matters. There's other games where it's more of a player game and condition isn't as important. And so you still have the collectors that still want nice things, or, PSA has become such a huge thing with getting them graded now that has really shifted my business, where if someone's saying, hey, I ordered near mint, this should be a 9.8 when I get it graded. I think that scales a little off, where, PSA, I believe, has 8.5 or higher is near mint. And so really, I think people need to think about that a little more. A lot of eBay sellers have no idea how to grade. They're just like, it's all near mint. But really, like, you have to have an eye for it and understand it. And so we've been grading for a long time. And a few years back, TCG Player came out with a card condition standards PDF.
Yeah.
And they really broke down the conditions where near mint, here's the different things that go into it: lightly played, moderately played, heavily played, and damaged. And that's kind of the way they look at it. And PSA, I mean, they're still upgrading their standards as well. They recently came out, and I believe that, the centering had an adjustment here recently. So they're updating even, today. And so if you have older cards that are graded, they might not even grade it the same as they do today because of their current standards. So it's an interesting thing. So I've got a few examples I can show, and we can kind of walk through it. Like, this is a red 5. And if you look at this card, the centering is actually off on it. You can tell the top and bottom. The top is a little bit bigger than the bottom is. But this card grades as a near mint. There's nothing wrong with this card other than just being discentered. And some people, this would be, they wouldn't want this as a near mint condition. But to us, this would be near mint. It's not that big of a flaw in it. Everything else is perfect. But I got a few bowcasters, and I figured this is a Chewy bowcaster. I'll take it out of the sleeve. This is a near mint condition of a card. Now, for a game like Star Wars CCG, the light side generally looks better condition-wise than the dark side. And the reason being is that dark back shows scratches so much easier than, let's say, this back. Now, this is a lightly played version. I don't know if there's like one scratch on this that kind of shows up, and I'm not sure if that's showing up in the picture or not, but that kind of makes this a lightly played. It's a deeper scratch on the back. Now, moderately played are going to show kind of more just wear in general, from the back to the front of them. Like, they just have more wear and scratching on them. And then we've got like heavily played. Heavily played is going to show things like this has like a little mark on it. You can see it's just heavy fog on the cover, or the picture and image. And so we mark these ones down quite a bit more. And then something like a damaged card, this card, you can see like it's not flat anymore. It looks like it got in water at some point. And so it's no longer flat. So, and you can hear it like make a noise when you bend it. So like that would be like a damaged card. So normally, you're asking about price wise. Normally near mint sells at the 100% mark. Lightly played. Sometimes you'll hear it called slightly played. Will go at about 90%. This is generally in Magic. 90% for lightly played. Moderately played is 80%. Heavily played is about 70%. And then damaged is about 30%. And that's about where we sell them at. Now, we used to do moderately played at 50% and lightly played at 75%. And I figured that, they're not as collectible. They're not as highly desired. when we started looking at what Magic was doing, we saw they were doing that 190-80, and we kind of adjusted to that. But I've been slowly going back more to my old pricing of lower conditions at a lower cost. You find them so much more often.
Yeah.
Near mint, I think, should actually be at a higher price because that extra time to grade that nice condition, we're 30 years out from Star Wars premiere. Why shouldn't those be a little bit more if you actually have them in near mint and they can grade well? You figure a graded card sells for about 10 times as much as the near mint version, on some of them. So you got to kind of factor that. So,
yeah, I mean, I think condition is king to collectors, and for many CCGs, collecting is what people do, right? Like, there's obviously a large number of people playing, but I've got probably 50 decks made up of different games that they're fun. I like the fact I have the decks made. I don't really care what condition the card is, but they're not being played, right? Like, and so I kind of agree. I think a bit more of that lower, like moderate played, more at like 75% of the value. Say it's $10, it's $7 or $7.50 instead of $10. I think that's kind of a good middle ground. But generally, when I look at cards, I always grade down, right? I think one of the biggest red flags I see on sales posts, on eBay stuff, near new mint, absolutely never played, packed a sleeve, and I'm like, you're overcompensating, man. What are you overcompensating for? Like, I understand it's impossible with, you got a stack of cards, 180, whatever, 1,000 cards. Like, I always just say, like, average is like play, right? Unless I'm fully confident that this is something that's like absolutely perfect, I just say it's light play because it is too hard. Like, I don't want to be arguing with people over like a scratch on one of 200 cards. I'm just like, most are in good condition. But yeah, so with light play, you're looking at kind of a little bit of whitening on the borders, maybe, not too many scratches, kind of good surface. And then as you get down, I'll keep a link to that TCG article that lays this out as well. But moderate play, you're starting to see more edge white, maybe some scratches in the back. And then heavy play, you see a lot of that. Some heavy play, I think, is the broadest category. What is heavy play? Because like there can be some stuff where it's not damaged, but it's
rough
up, right? But it is. So it feels like that's the one that has the biggest variation from it's like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of border white to like, this thing has been played for 20 years in decks. I've seen some, especially in Magic, there's some like really beat up revised lands you see floating around.
Well, I think your point on that is if it fits in a sleeve and it wouldn't be called for cheating, like being bent or like a curve or something, it could be really heavily played and still fit in a sleeve okay. But the damage, I think, is like when it would be called for like a bend or something that stands out. I'll show you some more cards like Lord of the Rings. These cards are beautiful, but the problem is Decipher made these with this black back, and so the front can be completely near mint on these, but the back can have scratching. So a lot of times people say, oh, my Lord of the Rings cards are all near mint, but they're actually lightly played or moderately played just because of the back being all scratched. And that's what's tough. So like a lot of times I'll have these marked as near mint, or sorry, lightly played, and they are just because of the back. So if you're just looking at the front, you have them in your binders, they look great, but that back is what gets it. Current Magic generally doesn't have, they look great right out of the pack, except for foils that bend right away. But Current Magic looks great when you compare that to like an Antiquities Magic, where the coloring it's printed different. It's darker. It shows more little nicks on the tops and borders, much easier than Current Magic. Pokemon's a little like the current Pokemon.
Could you look up a little higher, just a little, just
There's a few sets back. They still have the yellow border, but these are. They come out of the pack in great condition. You see, it's called Garchomp Collectibles. He's a YouTuber that does shows, and he deals in higher end Pokemon. He's actually here in Utah. I've met him once. Really nice guy. Pokemon, just like the grading for this is huge right now, and they're looking for hits. It's hard to get hits, but you get them. And they actually are selling for less than what I would expect them for how rare it is to get a 10 and to get these out of boxes and packs right now. Like I would expect Pokemon to actually sell higher than what they get. Some games like Deadlands, Doomtown, the cards were actually really nice and they show little wear at all. In fact, you have to beat these up pretty bad to show wear on them. And it's a shame that more gaming companies didn't do that. Same thing with Overpower. they have like a matte finish on some of the cards on the front,
Mm.
and so it feels nice, and they damage a lot less often. Now, upper deck games like Verse and World of Warcraft, those cards, you pulled them out of the pack and you looked at them and they were scratched. So like I never grade those because the card quality by the company making it was like, they basically pulled it out of the trash can and then printed cards on it. Like it's really a shame where, Decipher, you usually use nice quality paper for most of their games. Like I said, like Overpowered Doomtown with having a matte finish, or even like the current Final Fantasy game. Those cards are beautiful.
I agree.
And
Favorite
it's
cards.
a shame that more card companies don't take care of the quality of what they print on. Well, like I said, Upper Deck, finding near mint condition verse system is like, a rare find, even right out of the pack. It's like the foils are scratched. And so finding near mint of that is so hard. And the grading really isn't big in that community yet. And I think the reason why is the card quality was just so bad.
So one question for you, Scott. I think this comes up a lot as people go through their cards. Foils that are bent, does that impact the grading or not? My take is no, because it's a natural thing that happens. But things like foiled lines as well.
Right.
Like, what is a foil? I think you should point out a foil line, but I don't think it makes it lightly played. It's not. It's a defect in the production and normal for the product and sort of the industry, but I don't think it makes it lightly played because it has a foil line or because it's curving.
If it's a foil line, like on the main image, like if the foil line is here across the image part, I will generally mark it down a condition grade. So if it's near mint, I put it lightly played. If the foil line's like down here, generally I don't mark it down because the people most often care for the image than they do, the wording. So it just depends on where it's at in that situation. But yeah, foiling curves, I mean, that's pretty normal, especially if you're in a humid place like Florida, Georgia, anywhere in the South, or even in the Northeast where it's humid too. Like you're going to get a lot more curling than you do out West where it's much more dry. And so it depends on where those cards are stored. And so I generally don't mark it down for curve and foiling. I know it depends on the amount of curve or curl too. If it's like more than a 25% curve, they generally will mark it down.
Someday we're going to have to do a video of how to fix your foil curving. One hint is to not store all your foils together because it feels like sometimes they become like a curved mess.
Yep.
Like it's like they form like a hive mind of curling where it's just like the stack gets worse. But yeah, maybe it's a future video. Well, Scott, do you have any final thoughts on these 5 conditions? So you have near mint, light play, moderate play, heavy play, and then damage is the 5 buckets that most stuff falls into. My piece of wisdom is that when in doubt, mark it down. It's probably light play, maybe moderate play, but it's much better to deal with someone not complaining because they thought they're going to get a card that was a PSA 10 rather than, undergrading and people being pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is unless that card has some real value to it, just mark it. Like I mark most our Magic as moderately played because I don't want to spend the time grading a bunch of cards that have no value. If it's $20 or more, grade it, look at it, actually give it a grade. But if it's less, just leave it at moderately played, lightly played, whatever it may be. I had one game store owner tell me they look at the cards and they're like, this looks like it's been played with. This one looks like it doesn't. And they just do lightly played or played. And that was like the only 2 grades they did. And they said that all of their staff could mark that okay and not have any issues with it. So he's like, I never did near mint. It wasn't worth the like extra risk or people being upset. So I think that's kind of a smart way to go unless you're like willing to deal with it. We had one guy, he bought a Darth Vader from us on eBay, and he was like, look, it was a Darth Vader foil from Reflections 1. He's like, look, this has scratches on it. I'm like, it has 3 little scratches on the front corner where it still fits in the near mint condition breakdown. But he's like, well, you said near mint, that should be like a 9.6 or higher grade wise, and this would keep it from that. I'm like, it's probably a 9.0 or 9.2, which is still near mint in our opinion. And he was like really wanting to argue and fight about it. I'm like, if you're upset about it, just send it back. We'll just refund you. And he's like, oh, I don't want to do that. And it's like, okay, so you're looking to get money back from us instead of like actually wanting to resolve the problem. And I think that's where a lot of people, when they want to argue about it, but other times we've had people drop off collections back. This is all near mint. This is all near mint. And I'll see it. And I'm like, this is all played. And it's usually the person that's like, I've kept these in storage. I haven't really touched them. I really love this, that the cards are in perfect condition. It's the one that's not pushing that they're near mint that usually gets you near mint. And it's the one that's like, this is all near mint. Everything's perfect. That's usually the one that's not. So
I mean, there is this word as well that's like mint. We say near mint because it's nearly mint.
Yep.
But if it's truly mint, then that's like a whole different world where, like, I assume that if you're marking something as mint, that you've taken out one of those little, I don't know, little eyeglass things. What are they called? Little diamond specialists have
little jewelry.
Loop, jewel. Like you've taken time to reassure me that this is mint, and I assume like you've taken at least 10-15 minutes to do that, which people are not doing when they say like mint, this is untouched. I've had some bad experiences with people over promising, under delivering, so I try to do the opposite there. But Scott, thanks for hanging out, man. Check out Scott's store. A link to the TCG grading guide is in the video description here, as well as a link to Scott's store. So we'll catch you guys later with some more videos.
See you, buddy.